Hey everybody, today I'm going to be reviewing Kill Bill Volume 2. This came out in 2004 and was written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. I reviewed Volume 1 pretty recently, so I'll just put the link below for that. In that review, I did say that I thought that Volume 2 was a better film. I stand by that. I do think overall the film is just better in almost every way. There's more gravitas, the characters are more interesting, more well-defined, there's more of an emotional center and all of that. But I have to say, after seeing both of them together, very close together, after, I hadn't seen them both in years all the way through, seeing it full circle, I think I was too easy on the first one. I just don't feel the same way about either of the films as I used to when I was a teenager. Oh my God, I adored them like most teenagers did. And I think that's the perfect time to see it, when you're younger. But as an adult, I just don't get much out of it. I find these films, both of them, to be not particularly interesting beyond how well the different genre styles of the past have been imitated and weaved into the story. Even if you think the film is hollow and that doesn't bother you, obviously that's fine, you're entitled to like whatever you want to, but for me that hollowness, it becomes a problem more so the older I get, because I watch each of these scenes and I break them down and I realize they don't amount to anything, and I honestly don't even think they're that well written. Volume 2 continues the story, of course, from Volume 1. So Beatrix Kiddo, aka the bride, is, it's her tale of bloody revenge against her ex-lover Bill because he attempted to murder her at her wedding rehearsal while she was pregnant. I'll talk about what I like first. I love David Carradine. I think he is a fantastic actor. And, in the first one, he's not revealed fully in the flesh. And obviously in this one, he plays a huge part in it. And I think he works really well. I mean, he's very hardened and worn in his older years, but he has a tenderness, an earnest quality kind of beneath the cynicism, which I think is really appealing and gives him kind of a lot of layers there. So yeah, he's compelling and he's got a great voice. The best actor voice, honestly. I think he'd be great for narrating like a National Geographic program. And there are other really compelling characters that I actually think are more interesting than the bride herself by far. Like, Michael Madsen's character I think is fantastic. I'd love to see a spinoff with him. And I think a lot of it is because Michael Madsen is such a great actor. He's wonderful as Bill's brother. I loved a lot of the scenes with him, even if they don't go anywhere. I think that he is just wonderful to watch because he is so seasoned. He's got kind of a wise quality in his eyes, something that's kind of almost tender in his delivery, yet there's just that wickedness. I mean, he's so brutal, and he's got great humor as well. And I think that's why Tarantino loves him so much, why he's such a go-to actor, because he can have all of that range and do it really convincingly. There are scenes from a tonal perspective in terms of building the tension and the suspense that work super well here. And I think you know which scene I'm probably going to talk about. It's the scene where Beatrix is buried alive. I think that's a really well done scene, and I think it's something that Hitchcock would have been proud of if he'd ever gotten to witness it. It's the kind of thing it's very unnerving and it will stay with you, and it's tough to watch, but I think it's specifically tough for people that have fears of being buried alive or have issues with claustrophobia. Yeah, be careful. And of course, regardless of whatever you think of Tarantino as a writer or as an artist, he is very passionate and he really puts a lot of effort into his films, and I think that's admirable. I think his knowledge of past genres and pop culture through the decades is, of course, it's very impressive and it's very extensive. And the way that he employs them in particular, he has a level of sophistication and cleverness that you don't get from people like Robert Rodriguez or Guy Ritchie, at least in my opinion. But this film, as beloved as it is by the diehard Tarantino fans, it just doesn't resonate with me like Pulp Fiction does, or even Jackie Brown, Hateful Eight. All of those films, as I said in my review of Volume 1, all of those films kind of deconstruct the genre cliches to make a point about how they're used in a greater context. And this one is more pure self-indulgence. And of course, guilty pleasures are great. I've got them too. We all have them, and you kind of need them as an escape on occasion. But I think for Tarantino, because he's already somebody that specializes in self-indulgent films, I think that when he goes full in, it kind of becomes a detriment. I think there's a fine line, and he's always kind of skirting the edge. And when he crosses over into total self-indulgence, it starts to feel really pretentious. And it starts to feel like filler as well. A lot of the scenes, while they're enjoyable if you just kind of watch them on their own, like, because they are very quirky, and of course Tarantino has a great ability to shift between so many different tones and still maintain that cohesiveness, but they don't ultimately lead us anywhere that is interesting. And many of the scenes don't really add that much substance other than to kind of showcase that there are zany characters everywhere. I think a perfect example of this would be the scene towards the end of the movie where the bride goes to visit Esteban to find out where Bill is. That's a scene that, you know, obviously I've seen these movies many times, but I honestly, every time I return to this film, that's like the one scene that I can never remember what the hell it's about. I think that you've got a great actor in the scene and great potential for kind of a reflective, kind of a contemplative moment before the final stretch of the film. But this scene is really empty, and it doesn't go anywhere that interesting. And so many of the scenes are so repetitive, and I didn't really realize that until watching it this last time. So many of the scenes are about one person asserting their dominance over somebody else without much variation. And I think that those are essential scenes for sure. I mean, it's essential to have that, especially in a Tarantino movie, because those are the types of scenes that he writes really, really well. But I would like to see a little bit of a variation, for him to switch it up a little bit. And honestly, a lot of those scenes, even when that dominance is being asserted, they don't even feel that clever to begin with. I like to look at the big one at the very end. That's the scene between Bill and Beatrix, where they have that kind of final showdown. And it's not a big battle sequence or anything. It's just one long scene where they're talking. And I actually love that. I like that they end things with a conversation, but this particular conversation just leaves a lot to be desired for me. It doesn't delve into anything that feels particularly interesting in terms of like revealing anything about their characters that we didn't already know, getting to see vulnerability, the complexity of relationships. It feels more flourishy, especially the part where Bill is making this long point, like he's using this long metaphor comparing Beatrix to Superman. And yeah, it just doesn't feel particularly clever or insightful. Again, like I said, it feels like filler. It feels very surface level and kind of amateurish. But Tarantino is so confident in his dialogue, and he's basically just strutting with it. And I think that that makes it even worse because it comes off as pompous. And, you know, I don't like it when a film has its head so far up its own ass that it doesn't recognize how it's coming off. I remember in my review of Eyes Wide Shut, I talked about Stanley Kubrick and how a lot of iconic, like a lot of legendary directors, when they become really, really well known, they have a tendency at times to become a victim of their own style. And I think that I could use that phrase, it is perfect for Tarantino in this particular instance, because here he absolutely became a victim to his own style. Not only is he creating a pastiche of other people's styles, but now he's wrapped up in his own ability to pastiche all of those different styles. And I just think it stifles him creatively. And of course, this is just one girl's opinion. You know, not everyone likes to have that kind of substance in their entertainment, and, you know, whatever, I can respect that. But when you have a story that depends on blending other styles, when you cut through that and there's really no center that is inspired by anything or isn't subverting the cliches, and it's not making a larger point about art or filmmaking, the world at large, then I feel like, what was the point? And especially knowing that Tarantino has absolutely excelled at that in the past with flying colors. So it just kind of puts me off a little bit. There are many directors that have made films that rely heavily on other directors, on other styles. If I want to talk about one that came out this year, it's the French film Nocturama, one of my favorite films of the year. And that film employs many references to other filmmakers, but yet it uses them in a way that makes a commentary on modern society, number one, but on the idea of performance and art and how that relates to humanity and morality, all of these things. And that's why that film was so powerful for me. So I hope that, you know, in the future, because I know that Tarantino, kind of the bigger he got, the more he tended to self-indulge without much more than that. I hope that for the rest of his career. I know he wants to retire young, but I want to see him go more in those directions that I know that he can. I mean, he already with Hateful Eight did something more interesting, and I just want to see him kind of continue in that direction. And that's my review. Thank you all for listening. All my social media information is below. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.